Hi, everyone. I'm maybe Stoddard with the Bulwark, back with Bill Kristol, one of our fearless leaders, my good friend. He is also our editor at large and co-author of Morning Shots newsletter, which you should all take a look at, especially today. Bill is an eternal optimist, and he was finally admitting today that this election is really hard to take this campaign season.
I think a sentiment you agree with, I believe, right?
Yeah, very artfully said. It's quite draining. It feels different than 2020 and 2016. But one thing is familiar, Bill, and I'm going to have to read this to start out. Today, the Biden administration plans to accuse Russia of a sustained effort to influence the 2024 elections by using Kremlin-run media and other online platforms to target U.S. voters with disinformation. So we know that Vladimir Putin needs Trump to win so he can get Ukraine and the rest of Europe or whatever he wants. But this is really depressing as we look at the final stretch. This election is so close that the people who decide the elections usually are not very politically engaged and interested in consuming political information and campaign development. So it's frightening that Russia continues to be successful at doing this, and we are unable to protect ourselves against it. But it's frightening to imagine also, just how influential it will be. So CNN reports in a new poll today, across 6 swing states, 15% of likely voters could still change their mind, and they have not firmly decided. The polling experts, Nate Silver and Nate Cohn, are throwing a little water on the party. Nate Silver says, setting the convention bounce stuff aside, there just hasn't been much positive state polling data entering the system for Harris lately. Nate Cohn has a graphic today on Twitter saying this basically the same thing, that most of the movement in the last month has actually crept towards Trump. So there are good polls and bad polls, right? I mean, at this point, Bill, it's really hard to get excited about a poll that says she's up in Pennsylvania when the next one will say he's up. They really, really seem to me bouncing around. The CNN poll out today is great, but they change. I think the state polling continues to change. You can never really get a handle on a trend. What do you think?
I don't know about that. I mean, incidentally, on Russia, we're not helpless here. I mean, the Obama administration, people I talked to in 2017 and after, thought they made a huge mistake by not holding Putin more accountable in real time for what he was doing. They saw it happening. I don't know. Are we totally helpless to do things about Russian interference and make Russia pay more of a price? Maybe Ukraine should be free to attack sites that are killing Ukrainians deeper in Russia. Just to take one random example of the things we could do. So I'm a little worried that to have, again, a Democratic administration kind of seeming to wring its hands and, to its credit, alert us all to what's happening, but maybe not doing what they could do. I mean, on the polling, if you step back a bit, it's perfectly clear. I mean, Biden was down both nationally and in the key states. Harris took over. She's had a very good run for about 5 weeks and pulled to up some nationally, 3 points probably, went from -3 to +3, and pulled even basically in the swing states. And that stalled out in the last few days. And maybe it was always going to, incidentally. No one's ever had 15 great, straight weeks of progress in a presidential campaign that I know of, even the best ones. So I'm not panicking about that, but I think one has to also recognize that it has stalled out. The polls, when you average them, actually, though, they're pretty consistent. Harris has a slight edge in Michigan and Wisconsin, looks like. Pennsylvania, very, very close. Georgia and North Carolina and Nevada, then all these Sun Belt states, basically very, very close, which means that probably a tiny edge for Harris in terms of path to victory in the Electoral College. But again, if Trump wins Georgia and Pennsylvania, he wins and holds everything else he held, which it looks like he will. And Georgia and Pennsylvania are +1 Harris, and I think even or -1 in most of the averages I've seen. So anyway, extremely close, dead heat, momentum stalled out, maybe nothing to panic about. But I think, I'll just say one last thing. I've been on a couple of calls randomly the last couple of days, post-Labor Day, with Democrats, Harris people, some donors, some other stuff, and off the record kind of things. People have not quite adjusted to this reality, though. There's still a sense, I don't know if you find this when you talk to people, well, Harris is ahead. I mean, she's not ahead definitively. It's still a real tough race. We've still got to deliver here at the end. But, she's kind of the favorite. I'm not even sure. She might be a tiny favorite, but I think the right attitude to take is it's basically a toss-up.
Okay, that panics me more. the fact that there's a sense of confidence that doesn't exist in the polling. Harris obviously took the base back that had been leaving Biden. And so I want to go over some other quick numbers, which is really more important than looking at the swing state polls, which bounce around. Michigan was for Trump in one poll yesterday, then Michigan went to Harris today, and CNN. I mean, she's ahead in every one in the CNN one except for Arizona. I'm tending not to believe them, but generally speaking,
let me just interrupt 1 second. These are literally margin of error. I mean, people need to realize you understand this, but people watching may not. One poll at even and one poll at +5 does not mean anyone is wrong. It means that there's, in most of these polls, about a 3% margin of error. And that just means that those are probably, one has got a slightly skewed Harris sample, one's got a slightly skewed Trump sample. The truth is probably in between. The truth could be 5, the truth could be even. That's what it means to have a margin of error. So I think people need to just stop analyzing 1 or 2 point moves in these polls. That's literally what happened. It would be crazy if every poll showed the exact same result. These are 600 people or 1,000 people.
Right. But we're not even really seeing a trend. What we are seeing a trend, though, is with the different parts of the demographics of coalition. So her support among Black voters has grown 13 percentage points since Biden leaves the race, but she's down 10 from the 2020 mark that Biden wins to beat Trump. With Latino voters, she has also gained 13 points, but she's down from Biden's 2020 mark by 6 points. With under 30s, she trails his 2020 mark by 12 percentage points. With men, she trails 2020 Biden by 4. With women, she trails 2020 Biden by 2. And over 65 seniors, his mark in 2020 by 1. That's actually great that she's doing that well with seniors, because he was starting to do better with seniors than he had in 2020. And they vote the most. But as you look at these different parts of the coalition, Bill, she's doing very well with white voters. And it is believed that if she would create enough new vote among African-American women, I think new registration is up in 13 key states among African-American women by 178%. So if you create new vote there, and then you do really well with white voters, and Sarah Longwell, the publisher of the Bulwark, is quoted in a Wall Street Journal piece encouraging me, saying she's crushing it with women, college-educated white voters, and her inroads with white voters are bigger than you would think. So where do you think she might fall short of Biden's 2020 mark, right? New voters among Black men, Hispanic men are moving to Trump. We will see her lose part of Biden's 2020 coalition. Where do you think she is going to erode, and where does she make up the numbers?
I mean, I think what you described sounds about right to me. I mean, she's running a little behind Biden in 2020. So guess what? Her numbers in most of these demographics are going to either be a little bit behind Biden, which is the case with some of them, or maybe a little more behind Biden because there's some differential movement. None of these is huge. Again, I want to put this in perspective. People talk Black women. What percentage of the electorate is Black women? About 5-6% basically, right? Blacks are about 11-12% of the electorate. It's a lot. I mean, that's great. And if she wins those by 90%, she's winning them, or 5.5 to a half. If she wins them by 80%, she's winning them 5-1. So it's a 0.5% move. It can make the difference in Georgia or North Carolina. Don't get me wrong. But people just need to understand that, I mean, these are pretty small crosstabs in some of these cases because they are only 5% of the electorate. You'd have to do a pretty big oversample to get reliable numbers on some of these things. It does seem pretty clear that Trump has done that. The gender gap is bigger than it's ever been. You've written about this. It's big among young voters of all races. It looks like he's doing better with young white men, but also with young Black and Hispanic men. That they don't vote quite as much as older voters, where Harris is holding her own, as you said. So I think at the end of the day, she's not running quite as well as Biden did in general in 2020. And you know what? Since Biden won by a very close margin in the key electoral college states, it'd be good if she could get to the Biden numbers in 2020. That's, for me, she stalled out. She stalled out a point below that, basically, in these polls now. Very few national polls are showing her at Biden's 4.5% margin. The average is more like 3.5. She needs to, which means she needs to look forward for a second. She needs to win the next, in my opinion, the final, what is it now, 8.5, 9 weeks of the campaign. She doesn't simply need to, she can't just play defense. If she gets a draw, she'll be competitive on election day, but it'll be very, very, very close. And it'll be nice to get the momentum back again and win those most of those last 9 weeks.
Which brings us to the debate.
Yeah.
Which is really the next, maybe the last big moment to win. The conventions are behind us. I don't know what else comes after that isn't unforeseen and potentially volatile, but I don't even know if there's going to be a second presidential debate.
Well, do you think there'll be a second debate? It's unclear, right?
I'm going to open with this, and I want to know your opinion on all this very interesting reporting on her debate prep. As of last night, there was still the mics were still a live issue according to the Harris campaign. They're still trying to tinker with the rules, which I think is terrible. I think they agreed to rules and debates. The Biden campaign did. And then Trump says, no, I'm not going to show up because Biden was the candidate and now Harris is the candidate. And they say, you're a baby. And then he agrees to show up on September 10th with ABC. And how is this still going on talking about the mics? To me, it seems weak. I don't just show up and debate with the rules that were set. I know she wants a live mic with Trump screaming in the background. I get that, but that's not what was that was not what was decided. What do you think about this? Seems weird to me.
I'm friendlier to the Harris campaign on this. It's a stupid rule. They've never had it before, these dead mics. It was the Biden people insisted on it, much to their detriment. The Harris campaign wasn't a party to those discussions. The Harris campaign didn't exist at that point. Maybe there's a little case if the Harris people said you've got to show up on the same day you agreed to with Biden, that she has to agree to the same rules. I take that point as a kind of rule following matter. But it would be better. It would be a better debate if the mics were open, I think. And I think it's risky for Harris to just let Biden lie for 120 seconds and not be able to say anything. And then what? She's supposed to remember all the lies and rebut them and waste her first 60 seconds rebutting them. She never gets to say, wait a second. That's disgraceful what you're saying. So I'm kind of with Harris on this. I don't think she'll win it because for the reasons you said. I think it's just too easy for ABC to say, look, everyone's agreed we're all doing it by the rules that were previously negotiated. So sorry.
It's just, I think it's easy for the right to portray her as insecure, trying to change the rules. But I take your point that she would eat into her own time. But maybe it's important to eat into her own time to counter his lies. And there's reporting that that's part of her debate prep, is that she knows the moderators won't hold him to account when he lies. And so they're working on her being prepared to do that, which Biden could not. What are your thoughts on her prep, what she needs to do this week, and then what she needs to do on Tuesday night?
A little hard to say. I've read some of these articles. You don't know if you're getting exactly the straight scoop here. They don't have an interest in exactly disclosing exactly what they expect and how they're prepping her. I've always disliked these debate prep articles. A lot of staff making sure their name gets in the paper as one of the exclusive group that's doing the debate prep and trying to be smart with the reporters covering their campaign. And maybe not. Maybe they should all just go into a zone of silence, a cone of silence, and not talk about their debate prep. But there are a couple of articles, not terribly revealing. She'll have to combine presenting herself with rebutting Trump. I don't know. I can argue this one a little bit round and a little bit square. Should she she has gained because her favorable numbers have gone up. Trump's numbers haven't changed really much in the last 5 weeks. Her numbers have gone up. If you assume that, that's kind of an indication of something, the main thing she should do is continue to push her numbers up. And that means introducing herself, talking about her biography, talking about her agenda, being forward-looking, being like she was in the convention speech, I guess would be the best way to summarize it, and sort of ignoring Trump, not wasting a lot of time on it. Just stipulate, that's false, that's a lie. You can look at the website to see all the truth. We'll have it up here in 2 seconds. And I'm just going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to waste my time with this guy. You could do that. And I think maybe I guess I'm 60-40. That's probably the right attitude to take. But I'm 40-60 that, I don't know, you can't let these things just sit out there. People want to see that she's tough enough to fight back. They don't want to see her just sloughing it off. She's got to punch him in the nose a couple of times. So I can argue and I'm sure they'll end up with a mix of these two. But I think it's a genuine, it's a tough call actually on that. The one thing I will say is she has to be comfortable with what she's doing. And I always dislike this boot camp preparation stuff. I mean, she hasn't debated in 4 years. She wasn't a great debater. She was okay last time with Pence. And then in the in the 2019 debates. Mixed, I would say. What was impressive at the convention speeches, that was her. One got the impression she had obviously practiced it a lot, but one got the impression that really spoke to what she believes and her own bio and her own views about things, and including not having terribly fixed views on quite a fair number of, detailed policy things, but that's fine. She can adjust those. And I guess I would say the worst thing will be if she looks nervous, tentative, uncertain, can't finish a good 2 minutes because she kind of gets a little bit lost. So I would err as if I were in the debate prep, I would see what she does best and tell her to do that. I wouldn't overthink it and say, oh, you got to do this. I know you don't like doing this, but you got to do this. I think that would be a big mistake.
I think you're right. Anytime she can get to something where she seems authentic, just stay with that, because it will work. And people don't really always remember what the question was. I mean, the people at home. One thing, there's a piece in Notice, NOTUS, which is News of the United States, reporting on her prep, which made me a little bit nervous. It said that, according to two people familiar with the process, strategy sessions have careened sideways when the vice president focused too narrowly on minute details, effectively derailing the sessions. Now, there's two things, right? There's nervousness of just being in the room with Trump, getting ready for him, getting ready to strike that balance of ignoring him, being herself, but also punching him in the nose, and the pressure of this moment. And then what is like kind of her personal liability, right? Going in is that she sort of over prepares and she might get too focused on memorizing some sentences about detail, about God knows what. I think that even if she's mid, that she'll be fine. That the only thing she can't have, we want Boffo moments that go viral, right? We want her to look like a star. But I think as long as she doesn't have a moment where she just sort of falls apart that goes viral, I think she'll be fine. What are your thoughts on like whether or not she has to win it? Because I don't know that he ever wins a debate unless she technically implodes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought Hillary did pretty well in the debates with Trump, and I don't think it ended up moving the numbers much. She didn't lose anything, I don't think, in the numbers. Didn't give her enough of a lead to withstand Comey and the Russians and probably some polling errors and Trump's hidden vote and so forth. Who knows where we'll be a week, actually when we get to voting here, whether it's a month out in some of the mail-in early voting states or a week out or election day. So it's hard to say what she, quote, has to do. I mean, I guess I don't know. I kind of, Amy Walter, I think, said something about how everyone knows Trump. His numbers are unlikely to change, which I kind of agree with. She's not going to drive Trump's negatives up much, and he's not going to drive his positives up much. So it's about her. So I guess my main advice to her would be, this is 90 minutes. You get 45 minutes of them with questions, more like 40. So how many times do you speak? I don't know, 15, maybe 12. I mean, you have 2 minutes and then a little bit of a rebuttal probably, right? So 12, 14, 15 different interventions. Just make your case. Make your case. Don't worry too much. I guess I'd be on these, having thought 10 minutes more now since we began this conversation, I'd be pretty much on the side of drive up your own positives and let some of the attacks just slide off you, and you'll rebut them in coming days if they seem to getting any traction. You have a million surrogates who can get out quickly and explain that he's lying about about the border or about the tax plan or whatever. She does have to hit back on the one or two obvious vulnerabilities, but I wouldn't overthink that either. I think she did that pretty well in the convention speech. She doesn't need to spend 120 seconds on that, in my opinion. I think, but I also think she shouldn't get too policy wonky, which she does. I thought in the CNN debate was a little my agenda. It wasn't really even deep. The worst of all cases is to be policy wonkish without actually being wonkish. So it's sort of like platitudes about policy. I don't think people like that much. It's just boring. I'm going to have a tax plan that's fair to the middle class. Give two instances, give two examples. Rich people pay X and whatever. It's a couple of numbers. Just throw them out, get rid of them in 20 seconds. Don't dwell on it. And then say, but this gets to the broader question of what kind of vision I have as opposed to Donald Trump for our economy. I'd get to broader, I'd get to more personal, more bio, kind of as quickly as possible, I think. But I also don't know her at all, really, and I've met her, but I don't know what she's most comfortable doing. And I come back kind of to the notion that she probably should do what she's most comfortable doing. This is not a time to reinvent yourself 1 week before a presidential debate in September of a presidential election year. She's had a successful political career. She should think about what has been successful for her, and frankly, go back to that.
Well, I really hope she's listening to your advice, because I think that's good. I think it's good advice. And I think you've made a good point, which is she can't assume that people tuning into the debate heard her convention speech. And I think that it might be unconventional to use the debate to sort of talk about the arc of her life and her story, but it would be wise use of the time. And it's really her at her most genuine. And people don't know a lot about that. And I think a lot of people tuning in will not have watched the convention. The numbers were not crazy good. They were not much more. She got 500,000 more viewers than Trump. Maybe a lot of streamers, but whatever. I think that she needs to go in, like you said, and just maybe use her time in an unconventional way to her advantage, because it might be the last chance. I mean, really, if she has a great debate, I don't think she shows up at a second one. What do you think the chances are we get a second debate?
I don't know, honestly. I don't know. I guess
Trump will want it.
50-50. I don't know. I mean, a little hard to say no, because there've always been two in recent times since Reagan. I mean, but at least two. But yeah, I'm not sure. The only I think what you said is absolutely right. I'd also say the debate by itself, these things are not individual things, the convention speech, the debate. It's part of a campaign. Yeah. So where do you stand? I mean, what do people still need to know? What can you continue to educate them on through paid media for the next 8 weeks? And what do you not need to educate them on, because the paid media is going to take care of that? I mean, it should be part of this also gets me nervous when this suddenly debate prep experts are coming in. Well, debate is that'd be like having an expert. I'm trying to think of the right analogy, on one particular part of a sporting, let's get the wide receiver coaches in. Well, that's fine. You need to have good wide receivers, and they need to run their patterns and work on making sure they catch the ball. But ultimately, that has to be integrated into the overall offense, right? And they can't just be up. And I guess I think the debate is a step in this campaign. And I assume, and so I think they need to think a little bit about that. There's some things she doesn't have to do in the debate, because they can be done otherwise, by surrogates or by her over the next 2 or 3 weeks, or by paid media. There are other things, though, that she kind of has to do herself with the biggest audience she's going to have, probably bigger than the convention speech. And some people who watch the convention speech don't remember it that well. So that's, they also need to have things reinforced. And I guess that's why I keep coming back to the bio side of it, that I think that's the thing that she personally can deliver at the debate that's hard to deliver in other ways.
I completely agree that Trump can't step on. It's away from Biden. It's appealing and compelling. I completely agree. Again, people don't do that at debates, but she should. She should listen to Bill Kristol. Everyone, keep coming back to the Bulwark's YouTube channel. We have so much going on right now, but make sure that you catch me and Bill next Wednesday morning after the debate. That'll be really interesting. I'm nervous as hell.
I hope we're cheerful.
I know. Okay. Thanks, Bill. Thanks,
Could be
everyone.
Could be a very short episode if things don't go well, right?
Exactly. All right.
Thanks,
See you
Amy.
next Wednesday.
See you next Wednesday.